Financial. Thank you so much for watching our podcast, Real Estate Insider, Where America Goes for Funding. Give Angelo Christian a call or text my office, 832-431-6331. It's Where America Goes for Funding. For the last 20 years, your direct nationwide commercial, residential, private lender. Every week we do our lives. We get to tune in, talk with me, ask me questions about real estate, credit, finance, the markets. Those of you who don't know who we are, we're a direct nationwide lender. We've been doing it for over 20 years. We have offices all over the country, and you get to work with my team directly as a direct lender. We do all different types of financing packages, from FHA, VA, conventional, hard money, bridge, non-QM, DSCR, multifamily, business loans, senior living, assisted living, all of the above. So I really appreciate all of you guys tuning in, watching the channel. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us any questions that you have down below. We're here as an open forum to get you the information, the knowledge, so you can be successful with your real estate game and your funding. Tonight, we're going to be talking about one thing I do with my lives is I like to focus on one important thing and kind of break it down. And then that way you guys have the awareness, the knowledge, and you understand what we're talking about. So tonight I'm going to talk about closing costs, because this thing comes up so much, and people are always asking me, how do you handle closing costs? How do you pay closing costs? There's always these negotiations with realtors, brokers, sellers, buyers. So I want to talk about how we do closing costs here with our company, because it is a big part of the deal. Even like today, we had hundreds of people that were trying to negotiate and structure contracts, and explaining exactly how the closing costs work. So I'll be talking about that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to, obviously ask us. And if you want to reach out to us, remember, we're open 7 days a week from 9 to 9. You can call or text our office, 832-431-6331. You can also send us an email to loans@officialangelochristian.com. And we appreciate all of your help and your support. Please don't forget to give us a shout out, subscribe, enable notifications, like that bell, give us a thumbs up, share this with anyone that you know that'll get value from watching the show and the channel. It means a lot to us. So anyway, I want to talk about closing costs tonight because it comes up a lot, and how to actually handle it and go through what closing costs are. Because, if you don't figure out a plan for the closing cost, you're probably not closing. So let's talk about, first off, the first thing that I want to make a distinction, that closing costs are different than if you're buying a house and there is a down payment. Closing costs are different than a down payment. So let's say you're buying a house for $500,000 and you have to put 5% down. That goes against the loan. So it's 5% minus 500,000 means you're putting 25,000 down. You're going to be financing $475,000. Okay. So now the closing costs are separate. This is a separate thing. So you're already putting 25,000 in. Now you got to pay closing costs. You have settlement charges. So when you are buying a home, for example, you're going to pay insurance on the home prepaid for a year, of anywhere from 12 to 15 months. If you're escrowing your taxes, then you're usually going to pay 3 to 6 months of property taxes. All right. And then on top of that, you have the title fees. You have escrow fees, legal fees, attorney fees, title insurance, survey. So you have all these title fees. They normally total about 1% of the loan amount of the property. So if it's a $500,000 home, the title and all the settlement charges will be about $5,000. Your insurance and your taxes will usually be probably another 1%. So now you're 10,000 in. Now you have lender fees. You have processing fees, underwriting fees, origination fees, if you're buying down the rate. And so all the lender fees can be another 1 to 2% on top of that. So now you've gone from just putting 25,000 into the deal, now investing, 5,000 for title, 5,000 for escrow, 10,000 for the lender. So now it's 20,000 plus 25,000. Now you're 45,000 is what you have to bring for cash to close. Okay. So you might say, well, Angelo, I don't have $45,000. All I have is the money for the down payment. And I'm going to tell you, don't worry, that's cool, because that's how we do our loans here. We don't normally make our customers pay for the closing costs out of pocket. The way we structure it is either the seller can pay for it or you can roll it into the loan. We're one of the only lenders, we actually came up with this in the industry, talking about rolling it into the loan, so that way you don't have to pay out of pocket for the closing costs. And that's one of our neat structures that we offer here is, we roll it on top of the loan, so that way you don't have to pay the closing costs out of pocket. And so now you can, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Obviously, so when I say roll it into the loan, what I mean is that, Um, let me explain what that means. So, when I'm talking about rolling into the loan, and the closing costs in this example are 20,000, so that gets added to the loan. Okay, so it's not free. No one's paying it for you. I'm not trying to make you think like that. But your loan is bigger, yes. Now your loan went from 475 to 495, and your payments have gone up by around $90 a month. So you are going to pay more, so I want to make sure you understand, but you're not having to bring 45,000 to closing. You're only having to bring 25,000 to closing, because you rolled the closing costs into the loan. Okay. So everyone with me, follow. If you have any questions, or ask me down below. If I'm losing you or you're not sure about what I'm talking about, please ask me the questions about how to handle the closing costs. So those will get tacked into the loan. They'll get financed in, and then you will not have to pay out of pocket for those closing. When you go to closing, you're just going to bring your 5% down in this example. If you were putting 3% down, then you bring 15,000 to closing. You would not have to pay the closing costs out of pocket. Now, the other thing that you could do is you could ask the seller to contribute and have the seller participate and help pay for some of the closing costs in the event that that you don't roll into the loan. Now, one of the things that's important to talk about when you roll into the loan, when you write the purchase contract, you have to add this to the purchase agreement, and the seller has to sign it. And it's very clear if you have a broker or realtor, or you're even negotiating on behalf of yourself, that you make it clear that the seller is not paying these closing costs. It's not coming out of the seller concessions. So if you add 20,000 rolled into the loan, you write that in the contract as such, and you specify that these $20,000 are being set aside to pay the buyer's closing costs, settlement, and prepaids, and that it's not a seller credit. It's not coming out of the seller's net proceeds. It's being tacked on top of the loan. So it's important to have that understanding, because the seller's like, well, I didn't agree to pay the $20,000. I'm not doing that. And we don't expect him to do that unless that's how you structure the deal. And when you make your offer, you want him to. Now, if you want the seller to pay, hey, good evening. How you doing, man? Thank you so much. Nice to see you, man. So if you want the seller to pay it, then how your offer would look different. So instead of you offering like 520 with 20,000 set aside for the closing costs, you would offer 500, and then you would ask the seller to contribute or kick back 20,000. But the seller might not do that, because see, what the seller's concern is how much they're going to be netting. Okay, so 500 minus 20, that means the seller's getting 480. So the seller may not want to net 480. They may want to net 500. If they want to net 500, then you got to take the price to 520. So that way, after the 20,000, good to see you too, man. Hope you're doing good. So after the seller, after the 20,000 comes off the top, then the seller will net his 500. Good. Thank you, Henry. Thank you for chatting, man. Thank you, guys. Right. I'm explaining, talking about how to handle closing costs when you're doing a deal, because a lot of people, we always get kickback, and people, they don't have the funds for closing. So we're talking about how to handle and manage the closing costs, so that way you don't run into an issue when you're trying to buy a property, get a loan, or whatever you're trying to do. Because the closing costs are expensive. They can be anywhere from 3 to 6% of the purchase price or the loan amount. And a lot of people don't have the funds to pay that on top of the down payment. If the loan does have a down payment, now some loans do not have a down payment, like USDA and VA, but they still have closing costs. And so somehow those closing costs have to be paid, whether it's by the seller or by you as the buyer. And 80% of the time, people do not have all the money for the down payment, closing costs, moving, furniture, utilities, everything. So this is a strategy on how to roll the closing costs into the loan, so that way you don't have to pay it out of pocket, and so you can keep more money in the bank account. So it lightens your load, right? So so it's not a gimmick or a scam. And I'm not trying to say that the closing costs disappear. They're added to your loan. They make your payment bigger. But you got to face it and deal with it one way or the other. Would you rather, bring 45,000 to closing and have your payment $90 cheaper a month, or would you rather bring 20,000 to closing and have your payment, $90 higher? And so most people would rather hold on to their cash instead of paying closing costs out of pocket, right? Sometimes you can get the seller to pay the closing costs, and that's cool. And of course, if you can do that, then go ahead and do that. But in the event that you're not able to do that, then this is another way on how to handle to get the closing costs, so that way you don't have to pay them out of pocket. So if you guys have any questions, let me know about that, because it is a way. So, and again, if you're out there making offers or structuring deals, so kind of how I would do it if it was me buying a property. Like I had a client tonight buying a house in North Carolina for 500K, and he needed my help to structure the deal. I said, this is what you're going to do. Okay, so the seller wants to walk away with 500, and you don't want to pay the 20,000 for the closing costs out of pocket. So you're going to offer 520, and then you're going to put on the contract, because this customer of mine is not using a realtor, so he's saving the seller money and not using a realtor, so he can have the seller contribute for the closing cost. So the way he's writing the contract is he's offering 520 for the house, and then in the addendum of the contract, he's stating 20,000 will be set aside for the buyer's prepaids, closing costs, total settlement charges. Okay. He never once says that the seller is paying his closing costs and call it a seller concession. So you got to be careful about the words that you use, because if you say, well, seller, will you pay my closing costs? And you've already established that the seller is not going to pay your closing costs, then it's not going to do you any good to ask for a seller credit if you know the seller is not going to do it. It's only going to, probably worsen the deal, make the seller mad, and take another offer. So you have to talk to the broker or the seller, whoever you're dealing with, and explain to them that that this is not seller concessions. I'm rolling the closing costs into the loan. One question: I consider duplex. I was approved, for example, 300. Well, I would like to take a look at it, see if we can bump up your approval, because if you're buying a duplex, you get credit for the other unit. So let's just say that the rent on the other unit's $2,000 a month. You should be able to get credit for that up to 75% for the other unit. So you should be able to get credit for like up to $1,500 a month to go into your income to help you to lower your DTI or debt to income ratio. So the other thing is that if you file a homestead on the property, that will lower your taxes and then also lower your DTI and then help you to boost up your approval. The other thing, I don't know who you're talking to. If we're doing the loan for you or somebody else, you should be able to go up to a debt ratio of north of 56%. So that should also help you. I mean, I don't know your full story, but I'd like to take a look at your file. We'd be happy to take a look at it. If you want, you can send it over to us or call my office at 832-431-6331, that we can review it together and see what we can do to boost it up. But if you're definitely buying a if you're buying a multi-family, then you should get credit for the other unit. Like if you're buying a 4-family, you get credit for all the other 3 units. You just don't get credit for the unit you're going to live in. On FHA, you have to live in one of the units. Now, conventional, you can be a primary or an investment for conventional. So it just depends on, what you're doing. If you're living in the property, then it's FHA. You can do conventional primary too. And the difference is with FHA is that you're putting 3.5% down, and then conventional is 5% down. But if you're doing investment property and you're not going to live in any of the units, then you have to put at least 15% down. Anyone have any questions about that? We appreciate the thumbs up, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe, enable notifications. Share this with anyone that you know that will get value out of it. You can always call or text my office, 832-431-6331. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And the other thing too on closing costs. Now I've just been talking about closing costs if you're buying a property. Remember, if you're refinancing, then that's completely different on closing costs. So on refinancing, the closing costs with us always gets rolled into the loan, and there is no seller because you own the property. So the closing costs always get wrapped into the loan. The only thing that doesn't get rolled into the loan that you would have to pay out of pocket is the appraisal. We have to get the house appraised. So the appraisal fee varies vastly depending on what part of the country you're in, also the type of home. Usually appraisals are around $600, but they can vary based on where the property is located. If it's a jumbo house, a mansion, it could cost $2,000. If it's out in the sticks, in the woods, it might be $1,000. But if it's in an urban metro area and it's a traditional house, that's usually about $600 that you have to pay out of pocket. The rest of the closing costs, everything that I just mentioned, lender fees, title, legal, all that gets put into the loan on a refinance. Now, a lot of lenders make the people pay the closing costs out of pocket. We don't do that. We wrap them into the loan so that way you don't have to pay them out of pocket. Hey, David. Some seller don't like to put up a dime. Right. Hi, Mr. Bigglesworth. Yeah, some sellers don't like to do that. That's why I'm trying to tell you that. I mean, if you're like in an urban metro area like Dallas, LA, San Diego, Miami, whatever, most sellers, they don't, now it depends on, of course, where you're at. They don't want to pay the closing costs. This is a way how to present that to them, but you have to communicate that effectively and properly to the seller that it's not going to affect their tax liability. It's not going to affect their net profit. You just are choosing to elect to put the closing costs into the loan. Okay. And when you communicate that with them, then they should not have a problem. Now, if they don't understand or you're not explaining it to them the right way, or they just, some people are just, I've only seen it one time where somebody was totally shut off and not open to listening and just had their own mindset about closing costs and refuse to negotiate. Just go somewhere else. Go buy a different property. Unless you want the property that bad that you want to pay closing costs, then that's fine. But in my 20 years of doing this, the hundreds of thousands of people that we've done it with, they understood it and they didn't have a problem with it. So anyway. And we do all different types of transactions. We also do a lot of commercial and private lending too, is our forte. So if you need help with multifamily, bridge lending, hard money, cash out, refinance, or asset based, that's a lot of our lending too, and we offer that nationwide. So don't be a stranger. Definitely reach out to us if we can help you with funding any of those type of deals. But that's my 2 cents on the art and the strategy on how to negotiate closing costs, how to pay zero closing costs out of pocket. We've been doing this for over 20 years. Sometimes best deal. Yeah, you're right. That's right. So don't be a stranger. Don't be shy. Reach out, call, text me if I can help anything. 832-431-6331. Remember, we're a nationwide lender. If you want to join our team on the loan partner side and get paid for your referrals, reach out to Angelo Christian about the loan partner program. Don't forget about that. Or if you want to join our university, learn how to become a top producer, a top closer with Angelo Christian, check out Real Estate University online. All the links are down below. Remember, and don't forget, if you go to Angelo Christian Mortgage on Google, if you're one of our customers or partners, leave a happy 5-star review. We'll hook you up with a free Amazon gift card. Hey, Desmond, what's up, my man? How you doing? So don't be a stranger. Reach out to us. Anything that we can do to help you guys to add value. If you know anyone that will benefit from watching the channel, think of us. Like I said, we're open 7 days a week, and we'll respond same day, almost immediately every time. 832-431-6331. Okay, cool. Yeah, reach out to us. We do all kinds of construction. We do primary, we do investment, developer, depending on how big the project is. We've done thousands of units, or just, someone trying to build their single family home. We got the products. Hey, Cece, how you doing? How's Las Vegas? Good to see you. Nice to see you. I know you're probably crazy busy in Vegas, huh? With all the changes going on. Getting hot? Yeah. I saw that they took the Mirage down. They're building the Hard Rock, and they took the Tropicana down. Oh, you put the application already? Cool. Yeah, the Strip is getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, Vegas is a cool city. Looks like it's just getting better and better every time I go out there for business. We go to a lot of conventions in Vegas. So, yeah, Desmond, if you put your application, we'll definitely take care of you. Make sure that somebody reaches out to you right away. So don't worry. So, yeah, they're coming to baseball and basketball. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it should keep you guys very busy over there. So there's a new down payment assistance program that we have in Nevada. You can get $20,000 grant money in Nevada too. So if you know anyone that will benefit from that, please, share the information. You can just need a 600 or higher credit score, and if you're a first-time buyer in the state of Nevada, you can get up to $20,000 assistance. David, I do think rates will go down. Yeah, I do. I think that Trump is going to work really hard to get interest rates down. So I don't know if it's going to happen next month, but I think definitely by the end of the year, early next year, the rates will be. I don't think it's going to be a massive drop. Probably the most I would say is probably 1%. I don't think it's going to go down to like 2 or 3% again. I think maybe 1%. So, but I mean, I don't know when that's going to happen though. I have no idea. So I'm not worried about a couple properties. Oh, own the land? Yeah. So the way that it works is, if you already own the land, for example, then the land becomes your down payment. That's your equity. Okay. So let's just say that the land's worth 50,000, and you don't own anything on it. It's free and clear. There's no debt, and the house that you're building is 500,000, and the loan program requires that you put 5% down. So 500,000 multiplied by 5% is 25,000. So you would have to put 25,000 down, either from your own cash or savings, or from your land. Okay. So what you're doing, land is it's an asset, it's equity, it's valued, right? So you're putting your land instead of money, to cover the bank's requirement for the down payment on the construction loan. So you're saying, hey, Mr. Bank, take my land, put a lien on it. My land's worth 50K. So that way you don't have to bring any money to closing, because you're putting your land up as collateral, right? Because your land has equity, has value. So that's covering the down payment. So that's what land equity, when you see all those advertisements, your land is your down payment, use your land, that's what that means. Because land has value. Land is money, So you're using that to cover your down payment requirement. Does that make sense? That's what it is. So I hope that helps explain, Desmond, on how that works. If you have land equity, you shouldn't have to bring any money to closing, assuming it covers everything. You can even put your closing costs into the loan. The other thing about construction loans is they appraise the property based on the future value as the as completed value of the property. So they're not going to just appraise the raw land. They're going to appraise it with your floor plans, your blueprints, and assuming that the property was already built there. So anyway, yeah, I appreciate all of you guys watching the show on the channel. Check out our YouTube. We have thousands of videos on there, great content. Just you can Google or go to YouTube, Angelo Christian Mortgage. We've been doing this for over 7 years on our YouTube, been lending over 22 years. So if we can help you, please call, text my office, whatever we can do to add value, make it happen. We're here. So, oh, cool. Awesome. Well, we're going to be here to help you, brother. I appreciate you for tuning in and giving us the support. And we're going to do everything in our power to take care of you. So that means a lot. So I wish you all a great night tonight. Take care. All the best with your families. Check out if you need anything, reach out. Like I said, we'll be back again next week. Thank you so much, guys, for watching Angelo Christian Real Estate Insider. Take care. All the best with your families. Everyone stay strong. Peace out. We love you.